Hello, and welcome to Insightful Conversations with your host, Three Principles practitioner, Del Adey-Jones. Join her each week as she welcomes some of the world's leading Three Principles teachers and practitioners who share how this understanding has dramatically improved the quality of their lives and the lives of those they work with.
I am so honored to have as my guest today my mentor, Linda Pransky. Linda went to graduate school at the University of Washington in 1975. She specialized in psychosocial nursing because she had an interest in learning how people change. She learnt techniques and approaches to help people, but nothing seemed long-lasting or beneficial. When she met Sydney Banks in 1976, she saw that there was a different way for people to really change. Her vision became one of helping people seek real and long-lasting change. Linda is currently on the executive committee of the Three Principles Global Community, recent faculty member for the One Thought Institute, and partner at Pransky and Associates. Welcome, Linda. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you for having me.
So, as I mentioned, you're one of my mentors, so I hope I do a good job and don't disappoint you.
Always do a good job, Cal.
So I just disconnected myself there. So I want to start at the beginning, actually. I want to find out what it was like meeting Sid back in, I think you said in 1976. Mm-hmm. And what were you like before you met him? How were you showing up in life?
Well, I really had a hard time when I would have like a difficult experience. Mm-hmm. Like I'd have a hard time if I dropped into a mood. I'd get very frightened and I'd struggle.
Yeah.
And I also, I got my feelings hurt a lot, and I'd struggle with that experience. Mm-hmm. And so there were certain experiences that I would have that would be, I can name some more, but there'd be certain experiences I would have that I'd really struggle with. And so when I wasn't struggling with those experiences, I was really, for the most part, I was young. I was very fun-loving and enthusiastic. And then I just get tripped up.
Yeah.
And then I would get very down on myself for having gotten tripped up in my experiences.
Mm-hmm. So you had high expectations of yourself.
Well, yes, in the sense that I didn't in a way, I didn't want to be human. I didn't want to have human frailty.
Yeah, I know that one myself.
And I felt like I had more human frailty than most people.
Yeah.
Which I think is something that people generally think it's like they're worse, or they have more to deal with than others.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's always the case.
I think that's the beauty of this understanding, is we find out that it's actually not always the case, and that, those insecurities are pretty sort of like up for grabs for anyone. So
everybody struggles.
Yeah.
And what I learned is to struggle more gracefully. What I learned is that I didn't have to struggle as much as I did.
Yeah.
Because I would think into things.
Mm-hmm.
I'd process and think into and try to think my way out of. And so I would stay in my experiences that I didn't like for a long time, because I was trying to process my way out of them. But it didn't work. It would just make them have more longevity.
Yeah. I mean, and that was your training too. You trained as a psycho nurse, you said. So, I mean, that's what I'm sure you were trained to do, was to dissect and connect dots and analyze and process and all that. I love, tell me about your analogy about the car, driving the car. Your thoughts were like a car. Do you remember that one? It was on your website. You were telling Barb about, before you met Sid, that it would be like you driving a car in a mall and up on lawns. Do you remember that?
Actually, I don't.
You don't? Oh my God, it was so much fun. You were saying that your thoughts, that you didn't it was thoughts were like a vehicle or car, and you didn't know that you could like sort of drive on a freeway. You found that, you know, your thoughts were taking you places where it shouldn't. I
Well, you know what's interesting is I felt like a victim of my experience, like I couldn't help it.
Yeah.
So that if I was in a car, to use your analogy or my analogy, when I was in a car and like my car, you know, took a right-hand turn off the freeway into the mall, I felt like, well, I can't stop it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just going to drive over everybody. But I realized that a lot of the thinking that was problematic, I could stop once I understood something.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I was talking with a student today, and they were talking about how they can let competitive thinking and comparative thinking take over. You know, they compare themselves with others, or they get competitive with others, and they can let it take over. And I was thinking, I don't. And it's not like I don't have competitive thinking, and it's not like I don't have comparative thinking, but as soon as it comes up, I'm like, no, I don't indulge it. I have a mental commitment, a mental commitment to not indulging it. And that mental commitment came from an understanding that there's no cheese down that rat hole.
Yeah. Yeah.
That if I thought out linearly with that, if I thought out horizontally and kept going with that thinking, it would just create more of that thinking and more of a bad feeling, and it wouldn't resolve. And I know that.
Yeah.
See, I understand that.
I love that.
So it's easy for me to just stop it.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
definitely.
there's certain patterns of thought that I can just completely, they come and I go, no. And so it keeps me in a free mind.
Yeah.
Where in the past, it would just overcome me, and I would get lost in it, lost in that kind of thinking, because I would fight my experience, or I would think there was something to figure out in that experience.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so amazing. I love that. I remember you once saying to me that it's almost like the emotional reaction was almost like that beep, 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 beep. You know, when you're backing up and you're getting too close to something, it's like that alarm system saying, "Oh no, don't go there. It's wrong direction."
Now, don't get me wrong, because there's no perfection here. There are thoughts, experiences that I have that I get in my head about still, because I don't have enough understanding to not. But there's always the hope for that understanding.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
Because I know it's like when I get caught up in thought, when I get wrapped around the axle and I'm thinking about something I shouldn't be thinking about, because I think that there's, you know, I don't get that it's just thought, and I get caught up in it. I know I'm caught up in it, which is so helpful.
Yeah.
But also I have the hope that at some point, someday, I'll get, the penny will drop and I'll go, oh, that too is just thought. There's nothing there to find out.
Yeah.
I'm just caught up in insecure thinking. I
know, but just the fact that we have that ability to know what's going on, even if we're caught in it,
right.
that's enough in itself that we don't get, as you say, like really get dragged down that hole. We can have like poke our nose in it a bit and see what's there, but that real sort of like down there, no way back.
Absolutely, Del. It's a blessing. It's a blessing. Because like before I met Sid, I didn't understand my mind. In other words, I would be fine, and then I wasn't fine, and I didn't get it. I didn't understand why. So my psychology in life didn't make sense. And I get lost, and I'm lost. Why? Well, I didn't realize I was lost in thought, and the why was because I was thinking into the lostness and creating more of it.
I know.
So now it's not a matter of so much if I'm get caught up in thought or not caught up in thought. what matters to me is I know where I am.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. I love that. That's so amazing. I mean, exactly. And also, so I know you talk about, like, when you do get caught up in thought, I remember you saying to me once, it's like, like when I think I was saying, well, why am I here again? And you were like, well, who do you think you are that you wouldn't have this experience anymore? Just the acceptance of where you're at in that situation, just accepting that we are humans, that is the system of how our humanity works.
Well, and one thing that comes to mind that I love that Sid said to me once, he said, and I think it's in one of his books, I think it's in The Missing Link, but he said that there's one problem that human beings have. I love the simplicity of his message, and the simplicity of how he talks about life and how he talks about mind, the simplicity. He says there's one problem. People react to their experience. If they didn't react to their experience, it'd be fine, because if you think about it, if you step back, human experience comes and goes. It's always a flow. No one ever stays anywhere. Ultimately, you get down, you get up, you get happy, you get sad, you get caught up, you feel this way, you feel that way, but there's always this flow of experience. The problem is that when we have an experience that we don't want and we react to it, that's what makes it stick, is the reaction. And the meaning we put on it. Ooh, this means this means I'm a bad person, or this means there's something wrong with me, or this means, see, we make meaning out of our experience, or we think it's bad or wrong that we're that way. And when we don't do that, when we just have the experience and don't identify with it, or don't think it means anything, our experience just easily flow. And that's beautiful. That's such a beautiful reminder to me, is that there's only one problem, and that's the problem. People react to their human experience.
I know. As you're talking there, I'm thinking of like a little 3-year-old, and a 3-year-old just cycles through everything, whether it falls, cries, hurts, laughs, wants a toy, all of that stuff. But you never see a toddler sort of starting to judge themselves for having any of the experiences they're having. They're just cycling through them. So that's
really good self-esteem.
Yes, really. Yeah.
Because they don't identify with their experience, with their negative experiences. They don't say, well, this means this about me. Until later.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a great, I know I'm going to segue a bit here, but I know that you've started writing children's books. You have the first one that features Cal, your beautiful cat that passed away. But so I love that. I love the simplicity of the books. And I know that a few people are buying them for adults too. The people that go, well, what are the principles? It's like, well, read this book about thinking thoughts. It really boils it down to the essence. So,
and I just wrote another book.
You did?
Another Cal book.
Yeah. And what's that one?
It's Cal. Cal finds a new understanding.
That's great. So when is it? And it's not published yet?
No, I've written it, and so it has to be illustrated and then published.
Yeah, wonderful.
So I've got to get the illustrations.
Now, is this for the same age group, very young? Or?
No, it's going to be a little bit older.
Oh, okay. So
because it's really about natural, how it has 2 messages in it. It has, finding your natural self-esteem, your health. Yeah. Like Cal misunderstands that he's fine. There's nothing. He's a beautiful cat.
Yeah.
He wasn't. And then it's also for parents, because it's like, when kids are bad, or kids aren't doing what they're, parents can be, punitive in a way that doesn't help. Mm-hmm. And so they find a different way of helping Cal. They just love him more.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. And the other thing that I remember where I think children start going off the rails a bit about thinking is, I remember distinctly my mother used to say to me all the time, "You're driving me crazy," or you. And so, I mean, you grow up thinking, well, wait a minute, I can cause people to have their feelings. And I think it was done completely innocently, but we give them the message, or again, the sort of over, helicopter parenting of well, certainly growing up in England, mine was like sort of, it's what will the neighbors think, and behave yourself, don't upset people. And so we're bound to grow up thinking that we're all influencing each other.
Yeah, I know my mom used to get overwhelmed and talk about running away.
Yeah.
And it would really frighten me because I'd feel like I made her want to run away. And I'd feel really bad about myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you start thinking you have that much power too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's where the people pleasing comes in, and everything like that is like, I'm responsible for everybody's feelings around me. So yeah, that's great that because we were saying that, they're naturally, they have that self-esteem, and then at some point they lose that. So to have a book that helps point them in that direction, that it's always there. Somehow they just sort of, mislaid it for a little while, but it's always part of them.
Well, it's such the principles to me is such a simple message, because it's really, we have two minds. See, I didn't understand that there are two minds. There's like the personal mind, which really has to do with our ego and our thought system and our habits, and what we think of ourselves and life and other people, and then we have a deeper mind. Like we have an insightful mind, and we have a mind that contains our self-esteem, our natural mental health, that can never be hurt. The only thing that it appears hurt via our thinking about ourselves.
Yeah.
So we can think ourselves into, low self-esteem, or there's something wrong with me. But when we realize that that's just thought, it breaks apart, and we can go to a deeper mind, which we are a deeper mind. And in our deeper mind, we see the purity of us. We see that we are, there's nothing wrong.
Yeah.
But for our thinking. There's nothing wrong but for our thinking.
Yeah, that's so simple. That's the next book, teenager book. Because it really is. It's like, I can't believe the years I was so disconnected from that mind with a capital M, knowing that that's who I was. I was so caught up in this and past events and what I made it mean about me. And boy, when I actually felt that my connection, or my that I come from mind, and that mind is living me and always in me, it just, number one, life. Pardon?
It's a game changer.
100%. And everything just gets easier, because you just sort of like take the hands off the wheel, and it's just so much less efforting and steering and thinking you're in charge. And I just find myself so much more relaxed and confident. I used to think it was always going to come from outside, So that's a great one. I love that. And I love how you described it, because it was so simple. The two different minds.
When people, like for me, what the game changer was when I realized from listening to Sid, that my moods were thought. That was a game changer. And that was the beginning of a journey of, well, what else is thought that I think is real, or that I think is coming from. See, I never thought about, well, where do my moods come from? And if I thought about it prior to Sid, I would have thought, well, I don't know, life, God is punishing me, chemistry, I have bad chemistry. But when I saw that it was made of thought, it was a complete game changer for me. And it totally changed my experience of my moods.
Yeah.
I never had the same experience of my moods again. And what happened is my moods shrunk and they stopped being scary because it was just thought.
Yeah.
But see, I understood that through an insight, not through an idea, but through a very deep insight. Oh my goodness, moods are thought.
Yeah.
And it's coming from me. It's not coming from outside me.
Yeah.
And it's not because of my chemistry. It's thought is changing my chemistry.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. If you pump
And then it just was a journey of, well, what else is thought? And as you break thought, it's like you start to realize a deeper sense of who you are, and you are in a deeper mind. Now, if you were a religious person, you'd call that deeper mind soul. You are a soul, a consciousness.
Yeah.
You know, you are a consciousness because you are conscious of this world and conscious of this life, conscious of your sensory system, conscious of thought. You are a consciousness and energy in form.
I love that you mentioned something a little earlier about the line. I mean, you know how we talk about the line of consciousness and the sort of the personal, the story over here, the weeds as we call it, and that line. So you're talking about that line of consciousness.
Well, yeah, it's like, in other words, how I see it is that, you know, depending on what you believe in, and depending on how secure or insecure you're feeling, your attention goes, your consciousness goes different places, right?
Yeah.
So if you're feeling, you get scared, your consciousness goes to fear. And you can think into it and get more and more frightened, right? Now, if you're secure, your consciousness goes into better thinking, more positive thinking, and more positive feeling when you're secure.
Yeah.
And I would say, like, more purity of thought. So just to know that, to understand just that piece, that when your consciousness goes into fear, if you bite on that apple and keep biting on that apple, you're just going to create more of that insecurity.
Yeah.
And when your consciousness is more secure and you go have more secure thinking and you bite into that, you're building more of a positive feeling. Just to understand that human phenomena is hugely helpful.
Yeah, totally.
Not to do anything about it or try to make one better or one worse, but just, you know, not to lean into one or lean into the other, or try to make one happen more than the other, not to do anything with it, but just to understand that human phenomena is hugely beneficial for people.
Yeah. No, absolutely, and it's the observing it, like you say. It's not the trying to manipulate, control. It's not positive psychology. It's not turning something around. It's just the awareness is huge.
It's huge.
Yeah. That's really great. Yeah.
Because when I would get insecure prior to SID, it was a green light to solve the insecurity in an insecure mind. It would work.
I know. As you were saying, I'm hearing like sort of alarm bells, all system in action. It's like everything's.
Let's go for it. Let's think it away.
Yeah, really. And we just make it more solid.
Just make it more solid. Yeah.
Stick around a little longer. Well, that's beautiful. So I'm seeing sort of a whole series of these very simple books for every sort
I am
of.
too.
But all the way into adulthood too.
The Cal series.
Yeah, the Cal series. Yeah, as Cal.
My beautiful boy, my beautiful cat.
I know. So is there going to be a Grey Paw series?
Maybe.
Maybe. Yeah.
Grey Paw the Panther.
That would be cool. Yeah, Grey Paw in the wild.
Yeah, Grey Paw the Panther.
I love that. Well, we've actually, believe it or not, we're really coming to the end of our time. So is
Oh my goodness, it went by so fast.
Doesn't it go fast? I know.
Didn't it?
Yeah, really fast. But so is there anything else you want to just leave with us? Anything?
I don't know. There's so many things I could say.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want me to speak to?
No, I think you did it beautifully. I think you just touched on some really, really important key factors. Like you say, just it really is, it's the awareness, just the awareness.
But here's the thing. One thing I want to say is that I am so grateful that I met Sid, because I learned how to make sense out of life for me and make sense out of me.
Yeah.
That was the huge difference. I mean, it was such a blessing. So if you feel lost in life, you know, if you feel like you can't solve your problems, if you feel, you know, you need to find your mental health, your self-esteem, you can, well, listen to these wonderful programs that Del puts on, but also you can listen to Sid's or watch Sid's DVDs for free.
Yeah.
You know, at sydneybanks.com, you can find his videos and listen to him.
Yeah.
And if you listen to him, don't listen for a feeling that uplifts you, that takes you out of your head, that takes you out of yourself. Listen for a feeling that will clear your mind. And when your mind clears, you'll get insight.
That's absolutely perfect. That's exactly it. I'd heard a lot before for many, many years. And I think it's when I was given permission to get out of my head and stop trying to, you know, analyze and think and figure out, and just follow that feeling, it just, something just woke up in me. So.
Yeah, it wakes up your insightful mind because you get so preoccupied with what you already know, and you're trying to figure out your life from what you already know. And when your head clears, you have the opportunity for new thought, insightful thought.
Well, I'm going to leave it on that note then. Insightful thought, and thank you. I love you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Del.
Thank
I
you
really
for being
appreciate you having me on this program.
And I appreciate having you in my life. So, okay. Well, I hope I see you soon. I will see you soon. I'll see you in London.
I'll see you in London.
Okay,
Take care.
And you too. Bye-bye.